Elias Carter had spent most of his life under the open sky. He was a cowboy who liked silence more than noise, honesty more than show, and kindness more than anger. People in the nearby towns knew him as a man who never ignored someone in trouble. He wasn't a hero in his own eyes. He simply believed that a person should do what is right, even when no one is watching. He traveled from ranch to ranch, helping with cattle, fixing fences, or guiding horses. Life was simple for him, but it wasn't lonely. The land itself felt like a companion. The wide plains, the tall grass, and the wind that carried stories from far away. One evening, as the sun was slowly dropping behind the mountains, Elias decided to take a shorter path to the next town. The path led close to Apache territory. Many travelers avoided this route because of old misunderstandings between outsiders and Apache families. But Elias didn't hold any fear or judgment. He believed that people become friends when they talk, not when they fight. He had met Apache hunters before, and always respected their land and traditions, so he rode his horse calmly, enjoying the cool breeze and the soft orange light filling the sky. As he reached a narrow pass between rocks, he heard loud voices ahead. His horse stopped on its own, sensing something unusual. Elias listened carefully. The voices sounded worried, stressed, and filled with confusion. He couldn't make out the exact words, but he understood the tone. Something was wrong. He slowly guided his horse forward until he reached an open area, where a small group of travelers stood in a circle. In the middle of that circle was a young Apache woman. She looked scared, though she was trying hard not to show it. Her long dark hair rested over her shoulders, and her eyes were alert, like someone bracing for something they didn't understand. The travelers were accusing her of something. Elias stayed back for a moment, watching the scene. The woman spoke calmly, trying to explain that she had done nothing wrong. Elias could see in her face that she was telling the truth. It wasn't hard for him to read honesty. The travelers, however, seemed nervous. They were far from home, deep in a land they knew little about, and fear had clouded their thinking. Elias had seen this kind of fear before, fear that makes people make mistakes. He stepped down from his horse and took a gentle step forward. He didn't want to startle anyone. "Evening," he said in a calm voice. Everyone turned to him. "Is everything all right here?" The travelers explained their confusion. They believed the Apache woman had taken something from them, but Elias noticed that their words didn't match their actions. They were more frightened than angry, and fear, he knew, was a dangerous guide. He looked at the woman. She met his eyes with a mixture of worry and hope, as if she was silently asking him to understand. Elias spoke to the travelers with respect. He didn't accuse them. Instead, he asked simple questions: what exactly was missing, when they last saw it, whether they had searched their bags carefully. As they answered, he noticed more clearly that the woman had done nothing wrong. Everything suggested a misunderstanding. Nothing more. Elias gently encouraged the travelers to calm down and think clearly. Slowly, the tension began to soften. But misunderstandings don't disappear instantly. In the middle of this confusion, the Apache woman said something in her language, a soft phrase filled with emotion. Elias didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. She was pleading for fairness. She was alone, surrounded by people who didn't know her, didn't understand her, and didn't trust her. Elias felt something stir in his chest, a simple, natural sense that she needed someone to stand beside her at that moment. Elias took a step closer to her, placing himself between her and the worried travelers. He spoke firmly but kindly, making it clear that fear should not lead to mistakes. His voice carried a calm strength that made people stop and think. The travelers hesitated. Some of them exchanged uncertain glances. They knew Elias was a fair man. His presence alone helped them reconsider their assumptions. The Apache woman, whose name Elias didn't yet know, looked at him with deep gratitude. Her eyes softened for the first time since he had arrived. For a moment, the noisy world grew quiet around them. The wind slowed, the air warmed, and Elias felt the weight of a turning moment, a moment that decides whether a situation becomes worse or becomes peaceful. Then, in the middle of all this tension, something unexpected startled the travelers. A loud sound echoed through the rocks, and out of fear, the travelers reacted without thinking. Elias moved instinctively. His first thought was not about himself, but about the woman standing behind him. He shielded her without hesitation. In confusion, things happened fast. Too fast to understand clearly. Elias felt himself grow weak, his vision turning blurry. The sounds around him began to fade, and the world shifted into slow motion. Before he completely lost consciousness, he saw the Apache woman's face again. She was calling out, her voice filled with fear and desperation. But her expression held a deep, sincere gratitude. He didn't know what she was saying, but her eyes told the story. She was asking someone for help. She was trying to save him, the stranger who had protected her without asking for anything in return. Elias felt himself being lowered gently to the ground by careful hands. The sky above him seemed to spin. The orange sunset had turned into soft purple shadows. The world grew dim around the edges, as if night was pulling him inward. Through the fading sounds, he heard footsteps light. Quick footsteps approaching. More voices. Soft voices this time. Women's voices. They were speaking in Apache, the words flowing like water. He didn't understand the language, but he could feel the intention behind it. They were trying to help. Someone lifted his head softly. Someone else pressed a cloth against him with care. He felt hands supporting him, voices guiding one another, and quick movements full of hope. Elias tried to speak, but the words wouldn't form. His breath was shallow, and his body felt heavy. But he wasn't afraid. He felt safe, strangely safe, even as everything around him dimmed. He saw the Apache woman kneeling beside him, holding his hand in both of hers. There was something comforting in her touch, calm, warm, honest. She whispered something, a promise maybe. Elias wished he could stay awake long enough to ask her name, to tell her she didn't need to worry. But his eyes grew too heavy. The world slipped away like a quiet tide, right before everything faded completely. He had one final, strange thought. There were more people around him now. More women. Not just the one he had protected. Their faces were silhouettes in the evening light. And they moved with urgency but also with care. He didn't know who they were, or why they were helping him. But they were trying their hardest to save him. With that final calm feeling, Elias let the darkness take him, not knowing where he would wake up, or who would be waiting for him when he opened his eyes again. Elias felt as if he were floating. He wasn't sure if he was awake or dreaming. Everything around him was soft and warm, like a long, gentle night that refused to end. Sounds drifted in and out, soft voices, quiet footsteps, and something like water being poured into a bowl. He tried to open his eyes, but they felt heavy, as if they belonged to someone else. Time didn't feel normal. Moments blended together like colors mixing in the sky. Then, slowly, after what felt like hours or maybe days, he finally managed to open his eyes. At first, everything was blurry. A faint glow filled the room, warm and steady. He could see the outlines of wooden beams above him and the soft shape of a blanket covering his chest. The air smelled different, not like smoke from town chimneys or dust from the plains, but like fresh herbs and clean earth. He blinked again, and the world became clearer. He realized he was lying inside a small hut made of wood and woven branches. A soft fire burned in a clay bowl in the corner, giving off a gentle light. The place felt peaceful, quiet, and safe. Elias tried to sit up, but his body didn't cooperate. The moment he moved, a gentle hand rested on his shoulder, stopping him. He turned his head slowly and saw a woman sitting beside him. For a moment, he couldn't understand who she was. Then his memory returned like a slow rising tide. She was the Apache woman, the one he had helped. Her face looked calmer than before. Her long, dark hair fell over her shoulders, and her eyes held a warmth he didn't remember seeing earlier. She said something in a soft voice. Elias could guess she was asking him not to move yet. He opened his mouth to speak, but his voice came out weak and dry. The woman reached for a clay cup and gently lifted it toward him. Elias drank a sip of warm water, and it felt like life itself returning to him. He breathed deeply and whispered, "Where?" She smiled a little, as if she didn't fully understand the words but understood the question. Before Elias could say anything else, the door curtain of the hut moved, and two more women entered. They looked similar to the first woman, same dark hair, same warm eyes, same gentle expressions, but each one had something unique in the way she moved and carried herself. For a moment, Elias wondered if he was still dreaming. 3 Apache women were standing there, watching him with concern and kindness. The 2 newcomers walked closer. One of them knelt beside him and touched his forehead lightly, checking his temperature. The other carried a bowl of water and a cloth. Elias was confused but grateful. He tried to understand what was happening. The first woman, the one he had protected, placed her hand gently on his arm and spoke in slow English, choosing each word carefully. "My name Nalan," she said. "These, my sisters, Awan and Tiva." Elias looked at them, trying to smile. His tired eyes moved from Nalan to Awan, who had a calm face, and then to Tiva, who seemed younger and full of gentle energy. They all watched him like he was someone important, someone they were determined to take care of. Nalan continued speaking in simple English. "You help me. You fall. We bring you here. You safe." Elias let out a slow breath. So he had been carried here. They had saved him. He felt a strange mix of gratitude and disbelief. He had helped Nalan without thinking of what might happen to him, but they had gone even further. They had taken him into their home, into their circle of care. Awan dipped the cloth in the warm water and gently placed it on his forehead. Her movements were steady and practiced, as if she knew exactly what she was doing. Tiva sat near his feet, watching his breathing closely. Elias tried speaking again. "Thank you," he whispered. "All of you. Thank you." The 3 sisters exchanged small smiles. Even if they didn't understand every word, they understood the emotion. For the next few moments, they worked silently. Awan changed the cloth. Tiva adjusted the blanket. Nalan made sure he drank a little more water. Their teamwork felt natural, like they had done this many times before for people they cared about. Elias looked around the hut again. It was small but warm. The walls and roof were made from branches tied together, sealed with mud and leaves. A few handmade baskets rested on the floor, and herbs hung from the ceiling. Everything in the hut felt peaceful, like it was built with care and love. His body still felt weak, but his mind was becoming clearer. He remembered standing between Nalan and the frightened travelers. He remembered the sudden confusion. He remembered falling, but he didn't remember anything after that, not how he got here, not how long he had been asleep. He turned to Nalan. "How long was I here?" She looked toward Awan, who understood the question better. Awan lifted 2 fingers, and then added a third one. Elias guessed she meant 2 or 3 days. He nodded slowly. That meant he had been unconscious for a long time. It also meant the 3 sisters had been watching over him all that time, cleaning his wounds, giving him water, keeping him warm, checking his breathing. He felt a deep sense of respect for these women, who barely knew him but had treated him with so much kindness. Nalan spoke again, her voice soft but steady. "You good man. You save me. We help you." Elias felt a warmth in his heart. He wasn't used to people caring for him. He had lived a wandering life, and most of the time, he took care of himself. But here, in this small hut, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. Awan prepared a small bowl with warm herbal drink. She gave it to Elias carefully. The taste was earthy but soothing. Whatever plants they had used, they knew what they were doing. He already felt his strength returning bit by bit. While he drank, Tiva sat closer and began speaking to him slowly in Apache words, pointing to things in the room. She touched the basket and said its name. She touched the fire bowl and said its name. Elias didn't understand fully, but he enjoyed the sound of the words. They were soft and rhythmic. The sisters exchanged amused smiles as he tried to repeat the words. His pronunciation was far from perfect, but he didn't feel embarrassed. Something about these women made him feel at ease. After some time, the sisters stepped outside the hut to prepare food. Elias lay quietly, listening to the sounds of the village outside. He heard children laughing, the sound of wood crackling, and the wind moving through the tall grass. The place seemed alive and full of calm energy. When the sisters returned, they brought a small bowl of broth made from vegetables and herbs. Nalan fed him slowly, making sure he didn't rush. Elias felt stronger with every spoonful. As the evening light faded and the fire bowl glowed softer, the sisters settled around him. They weren't guarding him like a burden, but sitting near him like family. Tiva was weaving something with colorful threads. Awan was grinding herbs. Nalan was watching Elias with calm eyes, making sure he remained comfortable. Elias finally gathered enough strength to speak more clearly. "I didn't know anyone would help me," he said softly. Nalan tilted her head slightly, as if surprised. "Why not?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because we don't know each other." Naleen placed her hand gently on his arm. "We know your heart." Those simple words touched Elias deeply. He realized these sisters lived by principles different from many people he had met. They valued honesty, courage, and intention. They helped him not because they had to, but because they believed in doing what is right. As the night grew deeper, the fire bowl flickered gently, and the hut filled with soft shadows. The sisters spoke quietly to each other in their language, sometimes laughing softly at something Tiva said. Elias listened to their voices, feeling peaceful. Finally, his eyes grew heavy again, but this time, from calmness, not weakness. As sleep pulled him in, he saw the three sisters watching over him with warm expressions. He felt safe, protected, and strangely grateful for the way life had led him here. He closed his eyes, wondering what the next day would bring, and knowing that whatever happened, he was not alone anymore. Elias woke the next morning to the gentle sound of someone grinding herbs. When he opened his eyes, he saw Awan sitting near the fire bowl, slowly mixing green leaves in a wooden bowl. Her movements were steady and calm, almost like she was performing a daily ritual. The soft morning light slipped through the door curtain, giving the small hut a peaceful glow. When Awan noticed he was awake, she smiled softly and greeted him with a small nod. Elias tried sitting up again, and this time, his body responded better. The weakness from earlier was fading, replaced by a slow-growing strength. His legs still felt heavy, but he could move his arms without discomfort. Awan walked toward him and helped adjust the blanket. She said something in Apache, her tone warm and reassuring. Even though he didn't understand the words, Elias felt comforted. He looked around for Nalan and Tiva, wondering where they had gone. As if answering his thoughts, the door curtain moved, and both sisters entered the hut, carrying baskets filled with fresh vegetables and roots. Tiva gave him a bright smile, her youthful energy lighting up the room. Nalan walked to his side and asked gently, "You feel better?" "Yes," Elias said, his voice much stronger. "Much better." Nalan exchanged a happy glance with her sisters. They seemed genuinely relieved. Tiva placed her basket on the floor and began sorting the vegetables. Awan joined her, and together they prepared breakfast while humming a soft tune that filled the hut with a comforting rhythm. Elias watched them quietly. It amazed him how naturally they worked as a team. Every movement seemed coordinated, as if they understood each other without speaking. He wondered how long they had been caring for him. 3 days, maybe more. He felt grateful, deeply grateful, in a way he couldn't fully describe. After breakfast, Nalan helped him sit up properly and handed him a wooden bowl. It held a thick vegetable broth. Elias thanked her and ate slowly. The warm food filled him with energy. He could feel strength returning to his body with every spoonful. When he finished, Tiva clapped her hands lightly, happy to see him eat well. Later that morning, Nalan sat beside him and began telling him small pieces of what had happened after he fainted. She spoke slowly, using simple English words so he could understand. "When you fall," she said, "I run to village. I call Awan. Tiva. We bring you here. You not wake for long time. We worry. Elias listened carefully. He felt a wave of emotion rise in him. Thank you, he said again. I don't know how to repay you. Nalin shook her head softly. You protect me. We protect you. It is right. Her words made Elias think deeply. He realized that to these women, and likely to their entire community, helping someone wasn't a choice. It was a principle. A way of living. If someone showed kindness, they returned it with equal kindness. It was simple and honest. As the day passed, Elias tried to stand. Awan and Tiva hurried to support him, one on each side. He took small, careful steps across the hut. His balance was weak, but the sisters kept him steady. Nalin watched with concern, reminding him to move slowly so he wouldn't hurt himself. Their care felt warm and sincere. After a few steps, Elias sat down again, breathing a little faster. I'll get stronger, he said with a small smile. Yes, Awan said, offering him a cup of water. Slow, but strong. Tiva giggled, happy to hear her sister speak English. Elias smiled back. He felt a growing bond with them, a comfortable closeness that didn't need many words. As the days went by, Elias spent more time outside the hut. The village was peaceful, filled with the sounds of nature and daily work. Children played under the trees. Elders sat together weaving or carving tools, and families gathered around small fires preparing meals. Everyone seemed connected, like parts of one big family. At first, some villagers looked at Elias with curiosity. He was an outsider, after all. But when they learned that Nalin and her sisters had brought him in and cared for him, their expressions softened. People greeted him politely, some even smiling warmly. Elias returned the greetings, always respectful. Nalin explained that the village elders were discussing what should happen next. Elias was a visitor, and the village had traditions that guided how such situations were handled. But for now, he was welcome to stay until he fully recovered. Elias didn't want to be a burden. Whenever he felt strong enough, he tried to help with small tasks, gathering firewood, carrying water, or helping Tiva sort herbs. The sisters always watched closely, making sure he didn't overwork himself. If he carried something too heavy, Awan would gently take it from him and scold him playfully in Apache. If he walked too far, Nalin would guide him back with a worried look in her eyes. One afternoon, while the air was cool and the breeze gentle, Nalin sat beside Elias outside the hut. The sky was bright blue, and the sound of birds filled the air. She held a small wooden carving in her hands, smoothing its surface with a stone. Elias turned to her. Nalin, that day, why were they accusing you? Nalin took a slow breath and looked toward the mountains before answering. Travelers lost small thing, she explained. They think I take it. But I no take anything. I only walk near their camp. They scared. They think wrong. Elias nodded. He had already guessed as much. Fear makes people see things that aren't true, he said quietly. Nalin looked at him, her eyes soft. I trust honesty, Elias replied. And you were honest. A gentle smile touched her lips. For a moment, they sat silently, letting the wind speak for them. Later that evening, the three sisters decided to teach Elias more Apache words. Tiva brought a small clay pot. Awan brought a piece of cloth. And Nalin brought a wooden bowl. They held each item up one by one, saying the name slowly, waiting for Elias to repeat it. He tried his best, but his accent made them laugh softly, not in a mocking way, but in a warm, friendly way. Elias laughed too, enjoying the moment. It had been a long time since he had felt this kind of simple joy. As days turned into a week, the elders of the village finally visited Elias. They were wise men and women with calm eyes and thoughtful expressions. Nalin and her sisters stood beside Elias as the elders spoke. Though he couldn't understand the words fully, he could feel the tone serious but fair. Awan translated a few key points in simple English. Elders say, you stay until strong. After, you choose. Go, or stay more days? Elias nodded respectfully. He appreciated their openness. He knew he couldn't stay forever. He had a life and responsibilities outside the village. But he also felt a growing attachment to these people, especially the three sisters who had cared for him as if he were family. Later that night, as the fire bowl glowed warmly inside the hut, Elias spoke with Nalin. "I didn't expect my life to take this turn," he said quietly. Nalin tilted her head. "Good turn, or bad turn?" Elias smiled gently. "A good one. Very good." Nalin looked down for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the wooden bowl in her hands. "We are happy you here," she said softly. Elias felt something shift in his heart. It wasn't something he could name just yet, but it was real. Over the next few days, Elias grew strong enough to walk freely around the village. He helped with more tasks, collecting herbs with Awan, fetching water with Tiva, and gathering firewood with Nalin. Each sister taught him something different about their way of life. Awan showed him how to identify healing plants. Tiva taught him how to weave simple patterns. Nalin taught him how to listen to the wind, to the ground, to the unspoken things between people. Every moment felt meaningful. One evening, as the sky turned soft pink and the village prepared for rest, Elias sat outside the hut watching the sunset. The three sisters sat with him, their presence quiet but comforting. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. The silence between them was warm, filled with understanding. Elias realized that what he had found here was more than safety. It was more than recovery. It was connection, a deep, sincere connection with people who had treated him with kindness from the moment he collapsed. He didn't know what the future would hold, whether he would leave soon or stay a little longer. But he knew one thing clearly. Meeting Nalin, Awan, and Tiva had changed his life in a way he hadn't expected. And as he watched the sun disappear behind the hills, he felt grateful for every moment he had spent in their peaceful world. The next morning began with a soft golden light spreading across the village. Elias woke up feeling stronger than he had since the day he arrived. His body no longer felt heavy, and the weakness in his legs had almost disappeared. When he stood up and walked outside the hut, the cool morning air touched his face like a friendly greeting. Nalin, Awan, and Tiva were already awake, busy with their morning tasks. Awan was preparing herbs, Nalin was grinding corn, and Tiva was feeding the small chickens near the hut. When they noticed Elias walking without support, all three of them paused with warm smiles. "You walk good now," Tiva said proudly in her simple English. Elias nodded, stretching his arms. "I feel much better. Thanks to all of you." Nalin stepped closer. "You strong now? Maybe. Soon you ready to travel again?" The question hung gently in the air, not as a suggestion but as an understanding. They all knew that Elias had a life outside the village. He couldn't stay forever, no matter how peaceful the place felt. But thinking about leaving brought a soft ache to his heart. He had grown close to the sisters, and the thought of saying goodbye didn't feel easy. Still, he nodded slowly. "Yes. Soon." Awan looked at him with thoughtful eyes. She didn't speak, but he could sense what she was thinking. She had cared for him like family, and letting him go would not be simple for any of them. After breakfast, Elias walked through the village one more time. Children waved to him, smiling brightly. Elders nodded in approval, happy to see him healthy again. Every face he passed carried kindness. Every corner of the village held a memory from the past days, moments of laughter, quiet lessons, and gentle care. When he reached the open field near the edge of the village, he stood still for a long moment. The land stretched far and wide, peaceful and endless. The breeze carried the scent of pine and earth, and the sound of birds echoed through the air. Elias felt grateful for everything he had experienced here. This place had become a home for his heart. Even if only for a short time. Later in the afternoon, Nalin approached him. She held something in her hands, wrapped in a soft cloth. "Elias," she said gently, "elders want to see you." He followed her to the large hut where the elders gathered. Awan and Tiva walked beside him quietly. Inside, several elders sat in a circle. Their faces were calm and wise, their eyes warm with respect. Nalan, Awan, and Tiva stood behind him as he sat down. One elder, a man with long silver hair, spoke slowly in Apache. Elias couldn't understand the words, but he felt their meaning through the tone, warmth, gratitude, and respect. When the elder finished, Awan translated for him in simple English. Elders say, "You brave man. You help Nalan in time of need. You show good heart. Because of this, village give you honor." The elder handed something small to Elias, a carved wooden symbol shaped like a small feather. It was smooth, polished, and detailed. Awan explained. "This, symbol of courage and friendship. Village give only to few people." Elias held the carved feather gently, feeling its meaning more deeply than words could express. "Thank you," he said softly. "This means more to me than you know." The elders nodded, pleased. Then Awan added, "Tomorrow morning, you can go if you want. You strong now." Elias lowered his eyes for a moment, thinking. "Yes," he said quietly. "I will leave tomorrow." When they walked out of the elder's hut, the three sisters stayed close to him. None of them spoke for a moment. The silence between them held a mixture of sadness and acceptance. Back at their home, the sisters prepared a simple meal. Elias helped them even though they insisted he should rest. He wanted to spend every remaining moment with them. While Tiva chopped vegetables, she kept sneaking glances at Elias, her eyes filled with a softness he couldn't ignore. Awan worked quietly, but her expressions showed that she was thinking deeply. Nalan stayed close to Elias, checking if he felt tired or needed anything, just like she had done since the first day. That evening, when the sky turned a warm orange, Elias sat outside with the three sisters. They all watched the sun slowly melt into the horizon. The moment felt peaceful, but beneath the calm was a quiet sadness. Elias knew that at sunrise, he would ride away. The sisters knew it too. Tiva broke the silence first. "Elias, when you go, you remember us?" Elias looked at her, his eyes warm. "I will remember all of you." Tiva smiled softly, comforted by his words. Awan looked down at the ground for a moment before speaking. "You good man," she said. "Not many like you." Elias shook his head gently. "I only did what anyone should do." Awan's eyes said she did not fully agree. She knew the world outside was not always kind. She knew people often acted out of fear, not fairness. But Elias had acted with courage and sincerity, and that set him apart. Nalan looked at him quietly, her eyes reflecting the soft colors of the sunset. "We will miss you," she said in a voice so gentle that Elias felt a deep emotion stir inside him. "I will miss you too," he replied softly. The next morning came faster than he expected. The village woke early. Birds greeted the sunrise with cheerful calls. Elias prepared his horse with slow, steady movements. His saddle felt familiar, but today it carried a new weight, a quiet sadness he couldn't shake. Nalan, Awan, and Tiva walked toward him, each carrying something in their hands. Elias paused, curious. Awan handed him a small pouch filled with herbs. "For journey," she said. "Good for strength." Tiva stepped forward and gave him a woven bracelet made of colorful threads. "I make," she said proudly, "for you, so you not forget us." Elias smiled warmly as he looked at the bracelet. "I'll wear it," he promised. Finally, Nalan approached him. She held a small object wrapped in cloth. When she opened it, Elias saw a beautifully carved wooden pendant shaped like a leaf. The details were delicate, almost lifelike. "This for you," Nalan said, "so you remember. Kindness go both ways." Elias took the pendant in his hands. It felt warm, almost alive. "Thank you," he whispered. "This means so much." For a moment, none of them spoke. The air felt heavy with emotion, but also filled with gratitude. Elias placed the pendant in his coat pocket, tied the bracelet around his wrist, and hung the herb pouch from his saddle. He climbed onto his horse slowly. The three sisters stepped closer. "Good journey," Awan said softly. "Come again someday," Tiva added with a hopeful smile. Nalan looked at him with eyes that carried 1,000 unspoken feelings. "Take care," she said gently. Elias took a deep breath. "Thank you for everything," he told them. "You saved my life. You gave me a home when I needed one most. I'll never forget any of you." He guided his horse forward slowly. The sisters stood together, watching him leave. He turned once more to look at them. They raised their hands in a gentle farewell. Elias smiled and touched the pendant in his pocket. As he rode away from the village, the land stretched before him wide, open, and endless. But this time, he didn't feel like a lone traveler. He carried with him the warmth, kindness, and lessons of three remarkable women who had changed his heart forever. He rode toward the horizon, knowing the world was a little brighter because of them. The memory of Nalan, Awan, and Tiva would stay with him wherever he went, a reminder that in a world full of misunderstandings, kindness can build bridges that last a lifetime.